Tiny homes were supposed to be simple and affordable, but now some cost as much as a traditional home, and some tiny home communities are charging luxury level lot rents. And can we talk about the scam marketers advertising tiny homes for like $10,000 that are just completely ripping people off? As someone who believes in smaller, smarter living, I am going to be honest. It is frustrating to watch what started as an affordable movement become less and less affordable. So, how did we get here? And more importantly, where is the tiny home industry going? If you're new here, welcome. My name is Erin. I'm a real estate agent and tiny home advocate. I am promoting smaller living with ADUs and tiny homes through two different YouTube channels. I'll link the other one in the description, as well as my website, which has even more content on living smaller. Today, we're going to break down why tiny homes are so expensive, how the prices of them have increased over the years, where the industry is headed, plus the hidden costs people sometimes forget. I also want to talk about why you should not buy one of those cheap tiny homes you see online. Now, this is not a video that is going to go into the exact cost of all the different types of tiny homes. I do have some of those videos planned, so definitely subscribe to the channel so you can get notified when I get those up. But real quick, I do have an article that I wrote to complement the topic that we are going to cover today. So if you want to check that out, I've got a QR code on the screen that'll take you to the article. So you may want to check that out afterwards. Let's first start with a quick look back because I want you to know how the tiny home movement started. Because smaller homes have been around since as far back as man has been here. 100 years ago or more, people just built what they needed, and as their family grew, they added on extra rooms if they could afford it. Then around the 1950s, when you can order a home from the Sears catalog, homes started getting bigger until the late 1990s when the modern tiny home movement, as we know, began with those DIY builds and minimalist living. It was all about freedom, sustainability, and getting out from under big mortgages, often using things like reclaimed materials and sweat equity. Those early builds back in the 90s could be like $20,000, maybe even less. Back in the 90s when the tiny home movement started, there was not a lot of regulations or rules. And some of those structures they built were poorly constructed, so they just didn't last. A lot of people didn't have insurance on them for sure, and they're probably just using their own money to build them. So things like regulations, insurance, financing, all those different things started coming up as the movement kept going. Tiny homes became a big part of the affordable housing push in the mid-2000s because people started seeing their potential. The trend got picked up, it got noticed, and some saw dollar signs. The social media influencers, the TV shows, they saw the opportunity and they started showcasing tiny homes. That visibility did help the movement grow, and that created some new rules and regulations that started coming into play to make the structure safer and available on a commercial level. But it also pushed up prices. Today, tiny homes can still serve as a more affordable way to live, but a lot of what you're seeing now is probably going to be those super fancy or expensive ones. Plus some of the DIY ones. Those simple and basic ones, they're not getting their due attention on social media because they just don't turn a heavy profit for investors or builders. And let's be honest, nobody really wants to just see simple and basic. It's fun to see the more creative ones or the luxury ones, but there are two facts. A tiny home is cheaper than buying a larger home. And if you build a DIY tiny home, you can save a lot of money. But doing a DIY is a big commitment. There's a couple of questions that you're going to have to ask yourself. Do you have the skills? And will you actually do it? So many people start off and never finish. Is your structure going to be safe to live in? Is it going to last? These are the kind of questions you have to ask yourself and be ready to answer honestly before you take on that challenge. Now, let's talk about why prices climbed when the tiny house movement grew. And to be fair, the prices increased for several good reasons. Things like code and compliance. The builds now have to meet different standards and there's different inspections that is going to help make them safer and last longer. Labor and materials. It's gone up. It's not going to stop. And tiny homes often require specialized skills, and those with those skills usually can charge more because not every licensed contractor can build a tiny home that actually maximizes the functionality in a creative way that's necessary. With tiny homes and smaller spaces, we have to have customization. Every inch is valuable and sacred. Things like built-ins, convertible furniture, pocket doors, and just these space-saving items are hugely important. So custom is going to mean more time, more skill, and more money. Now, if you're not building the structure on site, you're going to have to get it to the site. That's going to cost money for delivery, setup, things like that you're going to have for your structure. And lastly, there's also been a huge luxury creep. People are putting quartz countertops, they're putting hardwood floors, all these smart systems. They've got designer fixtures and heated floor, rooftop decks, and things that just are beyond the basic and functional. So, of course, the price tag is going to cost more. You do have the option to not have anything luxury in your space because it is a choice. Right now, we're seeing a lot more luxury tiny home builders and even tiny home communities being developed because there is so much opportunity and demand. Now, one thing I want to make sure you understand, smaller homes don't automatically mean cheaper. And here's what I mean. A lot of people assume a smaller home automatically means cheaper, but it actually just means less expensive. The truth is that smaller homes still have all the expensive parts of a house that you need. And in most cases, the price per square foot is higher on a tiny home than a traditional home. Because when you shrink the footprint, you're mostly removing square footage that is cheaper to build. So those less costly pieces, the extra bedrooms, the hallway, smaller living spaces. But the things that stay, the kitchen that's got all the appliances and cabinets and countertops, the bathroom, which is going to have the plumbing, you're going to have fixtures, ventilation, the HVAC, electrical insulation, all these same systems that your traditional home needs. It's just going to be in a compact space. So they're just taking a big home and compressing it into a smaller package. You can see in this picture here, the green is showing you the more expensive space and the yellow is just slightly less expensive. And you can see there's a lot more yellow than there is green. But in this picture, you can still see a good amount of green, but a lot less yellow. So in other words, smaller homes don't necessarily mean cheap homes. They do mean less space. But overall, that price per square foot could be more expensive. Now, let's talk about something that's very important that you understand, because there are some hidden costs of tiny homes that do make them more expensive at the end of the day. The sticker price is not the full price. There are a lot of people out there that are not talking about these other costs that go into the true cost of a tiny home. You can't just go to the sales lot, buy a $70,000 tiny home and call it done. You still have to put it somewhere. If you buy land, there's going to be a charge. If you have to develop that land and put any kind of infrastructure, or if you want to connect to utilities because you didn't get it customized to be off grid, that's going to cost because you probably need things like septic, water, power, driveway. And if you're putting it on a foundation, you'll also need that. That could be easily $10,000, $20,000 a site, depending on how far these utilities are running. If you do go the tiny home community route, I am seeing the tiny home communities charging about $300 to about $1,200 a month, which may or may not include utilities. So that's going to be an added cost. I'm also seeing some communities that are not as transparent on how often or how much their lot rent will increase. So I strongly encourage you to ask about it if you are going to make that move into one of those communities. Now, things like insurance and financing, sometimes you have the option to get both of those. Some people choose not to. But the classification of your structure, whether it's a tiny house on wheels, a park model, or if it's going to be on a permanent foundation, all those things are going to matter when you're looking at insurance and financing. The interest rates, the lending options are going to vary, which if you don't have the cash to pay for your structure, you're going to need some financing. Most of the places that are going to give you this financing are going to want your structure to meet certain standards. And when you have more standards and more rules and regulations, that just adds cost to the project. Now, I've not been able to find any place that'll offer lending on a DIY project unless you're using some type of unsecured loan or maybe a similar product. So let me know in the comments if you know of anything else. Now let's talk about why I am frustrated with the cost of tiny homes and with the industry itself. And so I've got a couple of frustrations and I put them in no particular order. My first frustration, the movement started to help solve some of the affordability issues. And I feel like the core and the foundations of why the movement started is getting lost in all of the noise. And I'm seeing the loudest voices in the tiny home market become those luxury brands. Now, luxury brands, they're going to have money for things like marketing. So, of course, they can put more content out there so that what you're seeing and what you're consuming is everything related to their product, which makes sense. It's a business. But if all you're seeing is the luxury brands, you might forget that there are some builders and manufacturers out there that still can do the basic models for much cheaper. Plus, we've also got some scam marketers that somehow are still convincing people you can buy a tiny home online for $5,000 or $10,000 delivered to your front door. More about them later. My second frustration. I feel like the real affordable options, those legit builders, the ones that are keeping it simple, they're harder to find because they're just building. They're not advertising. They're not marketing. They don't have hundreds and thousands of dollars to pour into marketing. So they often kind of get lost in the weeds. And before you comment, I do get that building and manufacturing tiny homes is a business. I respect that. So I appreciate the luxury brands for what they are and the audience that they're catering to. But it's still tough to watch a solution basically drift out of the reach for the people who need it most. The opportunities are really just being watered down. It is so hard to find an affordable builder. It's hard to find an affordable prefab option. It's also hard to get into an affordable tiny home community without a waiting list that is years long. Now, my third frustration is related to the information and resources on tiny homes in general. It is very saturated in the online space by AI content. They're really just offering regurgitated information or very generic information. And the viewers are craving specifics, not just generic and very general information. They want answers to their real questions. They need to see how tiny homes are working for others, which I'll be honest, there's a lot of channels doing this well. So I applaud them because that is so needed. And also, sorry to break it to those doing AI videos related to tiny homes, people want to learn from humans they can trust. They're becoming blind to the AI stuff. So we just need to stop it. I know it's here to stay, but this is not a niche that needs it. These are people's lives and their money that is at stake. Now, we do need awareness. We need that information. We need to dispel some of the myths, and we need to have real conversations with those making our laws to help advance smaller living in general. So I'm excited to be part of this conversation and part of getting the information out to the public. Now, my last frustration, I want to talk about those $5,000 tiny home scams. And I'm actually going to make an entire video on it. So when I do, I'll link it in the description and also here in the corner. And I have to bring up these scams because I'm seeing it more and more. It is beyond infuriating. They've got ads on TikTok, Facebook, Amazon. They're all promising you can get a tiny home for $5,000 delivered to your door. Let's be real. I have zero confidence in any of those. They scream too good to be true, and they likely do not have actual products that are ever going to show up. But they're hooking people, and they're making a fortune on preying on people's hopes for affordable housing. Sometimes when you reach out to them, a major red flag is that they're going to tell you to message them directly on WhatsApp or order directly through their site. Don't order through Amazon or another place that could actually protect your money. It's just making me so furious because I know that there are many people genuinely looking for a way to live smaller and save money, and they are falling prey to these scams. So if you see these scams, please do not fall for it because a real livable code compliant tiny home with plumbing, electrical, HVAC, and insulation that an actual human could live in is not going to be built and shipped to your door for $5,000. So part of me combating all those frustrations that I have is by creating content on this channel and my ADU Connection channel, as well as the website, for people that are hungry. They're craving the content. They're craving the information because they're struggling. Some are at their wits' end with what is going on in the world. And as a real estate agent, I am seeing housing become increasingly unaffordable for so many people. They don't want to rent. They want to own something. And tiny homes are a real solution for this. And I'm trying my hardest to get as much video and written content out there. I've got a couple of subreddit threads on ADUs and tiny homes and the tiny home communities. If you want to check those out, I'll link those in the description. I've got a Facebook group, so if you want to join in the chat with others that are thinking of going tiny and you want to learn more about tiny homes, there's a place to connect with people just like you. I'll link all those in the description. I just want you to know I am here on this journey to help those that need it most, and that very well may be you watching this video. So know that I'm here to share knowledge, advocate for the industry. I want to help our legislators learn more about smaller options like tiny homes or ADUs, and I even have some personal goals of developing communities for those 55 and older who are looking to retire or slow down, and even some communities for those aging out of foster care. I think there are some underserved populations that really could benefit from this living situation. So if you want to help me get closer to these goals, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, share it on social media, send it to your legislators, help them learn and understand about smaller options so that they know when they're going up to represent you, they are informed about what you want, what you need, and what is possible. If you made it this far in the video, I completely send my gratitude to you. We are almost finished. I want to talk about what the industry needs, what's changing that is going to be impacting the cost of tiny homes. Now, I am seeing some good things. We're having building regulations and zoning changes that are really making headway. And this is going to allow for more of these structures in places like someone's backyard, and allowing for smaller structures in general. So more and more states are getting friendlier rules for tiny homes, ADUs, park models, and the more legal places we get to put them, that's going to translate to more supply. And when you have more supply, you're going to have better pricing. So the tiny home industry is evolving. It's got new materials. It's got new construction methods that are just completely helping reduce those costs. Things like structural insulated panels that are actually going to make the walls faster and easy to assemble. Also 3D printed homes that can be built in days instead of months, using less labor and a lot less waste. The prefab modular systems that are allowing the builders to mass produce the components that's going to save the time and money. There's even some really cool sustainable options like recycled composites or hempcrete, which is going to offer more insulation and help lower that environmental impact, which we didn't even mention in this video. These are innovations that are not going to fix the affordability of tiny homes just overnight, but it's a step in the right direction. We've got to keep pushing for creative, cost-saving methods, all without losing sight of the original mission that we want to keep simple, attainable housing for real people. Now, real quick, I do want to talk about where the industry is going, because we know why tiny homes are becoming so expensive. We know there's some hidden costs that are associated with it. But some of you are worried if the affordability of tiny homes is just going to completely disappear. And I do see a split. We've got the luxury lane with the designer models, the destination communities, those higher margins. So that is going to continue to flourish because there is a demand for it. And the fact is that the companies just have money to spend to create that content, to get it out to the viewers. That's how they sell their products. And again, I completely appreciate the luxury market for what it is and what it offers. And some of the places they're showing are completely amazing. I will be the first to say that. But on the other side of the coin, I see the affordability lane. People are doing shell kits, they're using used units, you're having simpler specs, there's more prefab options, more sustainable materials, options that can be transported easily and cheaper, and options that can just be produced faster. All these things are going to help meet that demand for affordability. So to wrap it up, tiny homes did take off because people wanted less stress and more freedom. And the price of owning a home was just sometimes out of the reach for a lot of people. But it doesn't mean the dream is gone. With the right mindset, we've got some policy changes that support smaller housing. We can still bring this vision back and make it available for those who most need it. So if this video helped you, hit that like button, subscribe so you can learn more about tiny homes. Visit the website, rearon.com. I've got a lot more content. Join our Facebook group, connect with others that are also talking and thinking about tiny homes. And I appreciate you for watching. I will see you in the next video.